Hello and welcome to Town Hall for this Sunday. While we wait on Lama, I just wanted to do some announcements. We have three different programs, two in September and one in October. The first one is the masterclass. There's 8 sessions starting in September and running through April. We also have the day-long virtual retreat that's coming up on September 21st from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And this is a reschedule of the June 8th event. So if you registered for that one, you do not need to re-register. And then the main event is the Awakening Meditation Retreat in Litchfield, Connecticut, October 27th through November 1st. All of the programs you can register for at dogshen.org. And I'll drop all of the links in the chat. I guess we have a little more time to fill, so be a good time to mention donations. The organization runs off donations, so if you could be so kind, there's a link that will be dropped in the chat to donate. And we also have a membership program that gets you discounts to events and other perks. And Lama is on. He should be joining us shortly. Take it away, Lama.
Thank you, Ed. Good morning, everybody. And a beautiful day it is here in old New England, good old New England, the Puritan state, the pilgrim state of mind. I've been thinking a lot about pilgrims, not really pilgrims at Plymouth Rock who were afraid to eat lobsters. They thought they were strange, never saw them before while they were starving. But being a pilgrim on the path, especially since I'm writing my memoirs, pilgrimage, the sacred journey of our life, or specifically a pilgrimage, a sacred journey. Perhaps you've done that yourself, or thought about it, or planning it for your free time, your sabbatical, your retirement year, or whatever, or read about them. There are many interesting, beautiful pilgrimages and things to read about, and people who've been on them also, their accounts. Perhaps our life is a sacred journey to something like a goal which we conceive of and have an idea of, but really don't know much about, certainly not all about, and it's part of the mystery. Even if we go on a traditional pilgrimage, like the San Juan Capistrano in the French Alps, it might be in the Basque Country, who can remember, or to Old Jerusalem, to the Wailing Wall, or to Mount Golgotha, or any other pilgrimage place, to Holy Ganges, Benares. So many places we consider holy in our world. Mount Shasta in Northern California, a place I camped for one summer in the old days. Very nice, in the forest there. Wonderful. With this reputation for UFO sightings, the Great Crystal Cave beneath Mount Shasta, and other things you can hear about, read about, and even experience if you imbibe the right things. You don't even have to inhale. Anyway, we won't go down that white rabbit hole. But one's life, it is a sacred journey, full of mystery and love, ups and downs and curves and potholes, certainly, and other flights, soaring and swooping, occasional crash landings. But on the most part, just look around the room, how fortunate we are. We've all made it this far. We're not getting any younger. Still together on the path. It's a beautiful path and a beautiful life. It is. And a spiritual life, even more beautiful. Pilgrims are usually seekers, seeking something. On the path of enlightenment, we're certainly seeking something. I don't know if what we lost is here on the path, on this particular path, but Maybe we lost it inside, or we just lost touch with it. Like our, I don't know, world or society, country losing touch with its soul somewhat. Anyway, going deeper, we could say look within, but that's a little one way. Look deeper. Seekers must become finders. That's the idea. Not become permanent graduate students living on or near campus your whole life, not really getting a life, independent or even building something like that once for others. A learning institute, an intentional community, a caring place, an infirmary, a kindergarten, a hospital, a Sunday school, or wells, so much needed in many parts of the world where potable water is becoming increasingly a problem and will probably be the cause of the next wars after we're done with the oil wars. And we don't really know what's there, even if we're on a specific pilgrimage. We don't know what's going to happen when we're there. We may not even be exactly the same when we get, quote, there as we are here, planning it or walking on the path. Even if we go somewhere in place, like, let's say, and I know it brings up difficult thoughts about what's going on in Gaza and Israel and Ukraine and places now, but I love going to Old Jerusalem. Well, let's say going to Ganges and Benares, not so war-torn at the moment, thank God. When you get there, you're not the same person that set out, which is kind of the idea. And who knows what that person will find there, or what will be going on there at that time, or what synchronicity and karma and grace will bring together at that intersection of you and the place and the time and the energy and the era and whoever else may be there. So similarly, on our spiritual path, Buddhism is dedicated to enlightenment, to freedom and liberation, to wisdom and love and the alleviation of suffering, certainly. But what that looks like, who knows? Suzuki Roshi, if you haven't read his books, look him up. Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind is a classic. He said, on this path, you may not experience something that's like a great downpour of enlightenment or a lightning bolt, but it's more like walking in a pleasant field or woods in the morning and getting wet and more drenched by the dew. So I thought that was beautiful. I just wanted to mention that to you. It's hard to evaluate our progress, but the journey is really the goal anyway, as many have said. And meanwhile, we strive, we practice, we study and learn, we grow together, we inquire, we work on opening our hearts and awakening our minds and nourishing our souls and each other. So let's have a moment of silence now for all those suffering at the hands, at the ravages of war, of bombing, of missiles, of pandemics, of starvation, of relocation, of being pushed out where they live, of the homeless state of 50 million or more refugees in this world, of what's going on in Gaza and Ukraine and East Africa. I just had a ride with an Uber driver. He called it East Africa, and then he said it was South Sudan or Guinea. And really, I could hardly know what that is. I know where East Africa is, and we know so little about the rest of the world, really, and what's going on there. So a moment of silence and solidarity. Together we sit, divided we fall, holding them in our hearts and prayers and sterling aspirations. All beings with whom we are inseparably interconnected, who want and need, same as we do, who suffer at the hands of ignorance, not knowing what's good for oneself, or even not knowing how to do what's good for us, not being free enough to do what's good for us, even if we have an idea what it might be. So let's become liberated enough to be able to do what we know is good for us. So wisdom and compassion and action go together so well. Love to one and all. Invoking and inviting all the blessings, inspiration, grace, protection and guidance, wisdom, love, compassion, virtue, energy, from all those on high, however we conceive of them or it, or awakening that as if from within, for the benefit of one and all. Empowering us, boosting us, transmitting to us, backing us, joining all together along the way. Drifting in the wake of all the enlightened ones, like bicyclists drifting behind the leaders, or in the wake of a great ship, smaller boats being pulled along, in the wake of the lineage masters and mistresses of old and of recent times, saints, sages, prophets, leaders, enlightened leaders, servant leaders, spiritual warriors, as Trungpa liked to call them, although that's a little martial for me. Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, great bodhisattvas, grand bodhisattvas, enlightened bodhisattvas like the Dalai Lama. Maybe not a full enlightened Buddha, but a great grand bodhisattva, a Mahasattva bodhisattva, like a Mahasattva bodhisattva, remaining on the brink of enlightenment until we all together can get there, be there. Enjoy that bliss, peace, harmony. Great connection, sacred connection, dissolving and connecting at the same time. The bodhisattvas, the awakeners, the compassionators, the Buddhas to be, ourselves included, all endowed with the luminous bodhicitta, the Buddha nature, divine mind, Buddha mind, cosmic consciousness, bodhicitta, bodhi, awakened, enlightened, citta, consciousness, our highest Gnostic wisdom intuition. Imaho, let's go. Walking the path with Thich Nhat Hanh, who slowed down a peace march on Fifth Avenue until it took 5 hours to go a few blocks, leading the way in walking meditation. Without using the word meditation, he just slowed everybody down. All the activists, the whole crowd, tens of thousands actually. Let's join him, them. We're moving even now. We just don't know it. Of course, moving through space, even sitting, moving together along the path. So assume your Buddha seat, take your Buddha stance, stand firm, steadfast, settle in, settle down and relax into the flow and be carried along, part of the flow. Nothing more to know. Let's go. Namaho. Wondrous, miraculous, amazing. Thank you. Eureka. Hallelujah. Swaha. Amen. Sitting Zazen is sitting Buddha, as Suzuki Roshi said. Everyday life, just being, is the Genjo Koan, the Koan, the riddle, the conundrum, the mystery of everyday life, as Dogen Zen Master said. Just sitting, just breathing, just being, standing your ground. This is like a sit-in, like a be-in. Just being with a capital B plus in the golden park of awareness with a capital A plus, with the golden gate of nirvana rising out of the mist. Imaho. Just being. Awareness alone. Moment to moment present awareness, naked awareness. Isness, suchness, openness, and luminous awareness inseparable. Ah. The five ahs of Longchenpa's Dzogchen mandala. A friendly openness and luminous awareness inseparable with the big out breath, releasing, relinquishing, a little death with each out breath. Imaho. May the force be with you. The great And for the fifth and last time for now, let's really do it. The visits of ahs. Learn to inside out, emptying yourself totally. It's like mouth to mouth, mind to mind, heart to heart resuscitation. Enjoy the joy and lightness, harmony, serenity, peace, shanti, natural meditation, non-meditation, not even striving, letting go, letting things come and go, letting be. Imaho, ha he he. Ah. Om, ahum, om, ahum, om, ahum, ahum. Om tare tu tare tu so 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 so om tare today so om tare so om tare so om tare so so om tare Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha. Homage to the female Buddha, the womb of enlightenment, Mahashunyata, Mahaprajnaparamita, Tara, Drolma in Tibetan, the liberatress. Tara, who came to earth with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men and women. Tara, turn this way. Let me behold thee. Ah, Namaho. Way to go. I've been thinking of Zen practice in my year into Japan and sessions, and especially especially Suzuki Roshi, founder of the San Francisco Zen Center, author of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and a few other books. My longtime dear friend, and he's been a teacher in the Sangha also, Lou Richmond Sensei in the Bay Area, has just gathered together and is getting published a book of stories of Suzuki Roshi. He's one of the pioneers of Buddhism in America, and Lou was his disciple going all the way back to, I believe, the late 60s, like Richard Baker, Dick Baker, Roshi, and others. And he's gathered stories of Suzuki Roshi, who we knew pretty well. And he was even his attendant for a time at Tassajara Zen Center. Anyway, so it made me think about Suzuki Roshi. And Lou is the author of Aging as a Spiritual Practice, much recommended in case any of you feel like, age coming on. And before that, he had a bestseller, a wonderful book. He's a very bright and brilliant person and real bodhisattva, because called Work as a Spiritual Practice. I mean, whoever heard of that? I mean, Lou should get a gong for that book, which he published about 20 years ago. Maybe more. Who knew work was a spiritual practice? What could be? Lou will explain and demonstrate how. Of course, Buddha himself, although being a monk, included right livelihood, true vocation as part of the Eightfold Path of Enlightenment, 8 steps to enlightenment that he taught Buddha 2,600 years ago. It's the 5th step on the Eightfold Path. Check it out. Making a life, not just making a living. Anyway, people have had questions, and sometimes we run out of time for questions. There's a lot we could talk about. There's a lot going on in the world to think about, to pray about, to do something about if we feel so moved, and I hope we do. Including the Olympics, to rejoice in. Who knew that sports could be a peacemaking force? Let's pray that nothing untoward happens there at those big gatherings. Anyway, did anybody see the part of the opening ceremonies in Paris floating out on a lotus? The white Tara and the green Tara, singstress muses who sang Imagine, the great John Lennon song. Check it out. Easy to call up, no doubt, on your electronic screen of one type or another. One of my favorite songs, Imagine, by John Lennon. Not the Beatles, but John Lennon. Any questions, please?
We had a couple of questions. The first one was, is there any significance to choosing the dates of the residential retreat?
Good question. Well, of course, there are practical concerns, like finding a retreat center that we can fit, that's appropriate for a silent retreat, and that has decent food and facilities, and when it's available, and that we could afford it at a price we can maintain, like live with. But there's also, astrological things. Sometimes we try to tune into the sacred seasons, the Buddhist holidays, the time of the month, and by that I don't mean the menstruation. I'm talking about the full moon, the new moon, the quarter moon, or the 10th of the lunar calendar, the waxing moon of Padmasambhava Guru Rinpoche, or the 25th of the lunar calendar, the waning moon of his consort Yeshe Sogel, the Dakini day, and so on. So all those things. And then, of course, by the practical, I guess they're practical considerations, like which coast do we have it on, etc. I wonder why you're asking that. Are the dates not convenient for you, or you're asking about cosmic concurrences?
Mainly the Halloween, Sama, that coincidence.
Yes. Well, when I was younger, I used to talk about all those things and remember all those things and think about those things and joke about them, and definitely mention, like, this is the Halloween retreat, or Monday night, in Cambridge when we used to meet every Monday night in the 90s. Then that Halloween is a good Buddhist holiday, time for unmasking and seeing through costumes and so on. But this time it turned out to be the last week of October in Connecticut. And I personally am more tuned in to another holiday at that time called Election Day, and concerned about what kind of costumes or uniforms or, seeing through or getting caught up and reacting in comes around that election time or election season. Anyway, yes, Halloween is a great Buddhist holiday celebrated all over the world, which means here, not celebrated in Asia. But every country has something like that about All Souls Day, ancestors, unseen beings, half-seen beings, and so on. Any other questions?
What is the best way to be an activist in the context of the tradition?
Doing this, of course. Spiritual activism. Activate the spirit. Put a tire in your tank and go forth, make a difference. That's a serious answer. It may be a little steep for some, not obvious, so I could elaborate. First of all, best for who? Best for you? Best for all? Hard to say. What's best for you? What's your situation? What's your possibilities? What are your talents? What can you contribute? Is that a question of our whole life? So not everybody has to volunteer in Calcutta at Mother Teresa's orphanage, or be with Doctors Without Borders, going to places in the world and helping with health issues, or a nurse, a social worker, a parent, a mother. But there are many ways to serve and to help and to contribute. Isn't it interesting that the first of the 6 transcendental virtues of the Bodhisattvas, the 6 transformative practices, the 6 paramitas, whatever you call them, the 6 paramecium, the 6 Panacean practices of the Bodhisattvas, the paramitas. The first one is generosity. Not meditation, or mindfulness, or wisdom. Generosity, giving. Caritas. Charitable giving, Christian giving, giving of oneself, not just giving material or medicine or money. Lending a shoulder, lending an ear, being there for others. Giving of oneself. As Buddha said, or someone, no love is greater than giving one's life for another. Somebody said that. Some saint. So what can you do or contribute or you feel moved to do? That's the question. Obviously, in this violent and tumultuous world, peacemaking, not pacifying necessarily, peacemaking is a great contribution and could be a great vocation. But then how do you do that? So there's a lot to think about in this way. Of course, I'm teaching meditation and Dharma because I think that's what I can contribute to the world. But I also organize things and do things. Not everybody votes, especially spiritual people. I know, New Age people, they may not vote. That's kind of inactivism. I don't know if it's okay, but then furthermore, some of us go and complain when we haven't even voted or done much about it. So I don't know that that's okay. You get my drift. It's like being an absentee parent and then complaining about how the children turned out. Anyway, I don't want to mention any names to protect the guilty, Leo. Just teasing. Leo's a great parent and grandparent. He's a doctor also. So there's a lot of ways to help in the world, obviously. Giving material, giving support, being there for another. giving medicine, giving your best efforts to cure diseases. God knows we need some of that. Getting out the vote, being nice to yourself and your family and your neighbors and the animals that we share the environment with and so on, animals big and small. So that's a few thoughts.
We had another that's rather complex. Let me see if I can break it down. So this individual just finished reading Letting Go of the Person You Used to Be, and she had a Suzuki Roshi question. The quote is, "The argument between free will and determinism can be better understood by observing my own elbow. Yes, it is true that I can flex it however I want, and I demonstrate like so, but it only moves one way."
It only bends one way. So that's a good example of freedom and yet determinism. It's already been determined how it works. So that's a philosophical discussion about free will. How much free will do we have? It's an ancient philosophical discussion, and it bears on us too. Of course, Buddha and all the wisdom traditions deal with these things, and philosophy and so on. Being, balancing being and doing. I went to a play here in Boston called Fat Hamlet. It was very interesting. Fat Hamlet said, "To be or not to be." Is that a question? So I don't want to insult anybody about, that word that was used in the title of the play, but never mind. To be or not to be, an ancient question, but how to be and also to do, and not get lost in the doing and still be in touch with oneself. To be. Not just be a human doing machine, but a human being also. More human. Do we have agency? Who's doing what around here? Who's in charge? Is someone pulling the strings up above like a puppet master? Is everything already determined, like it's destiny, like predestined? That's the discussion of free will and determinism. D.T. Suzuki, not Suzuki Roshi, D.T. Suzuki was a great international Buddhist scholar, Japanese Zen master, let's say. He was a professor at Columbia for a few years, although he lived in Japan most of the whole of his life. He was very influential in the 50s, 60s with the beatniks and had a lot of students like Allen Ginsberg, Merce Cunningham, the dance master, John Cage, the great musician, Thomas Merton, famous Trappist monk who investigated Buddhism in Asia at the end of his life, and others. So D.T. Suzuki addressed that kind of philosophical issue. He knew English, he knew German, he was an international, he knew Sanskrit, of course Chinese and Japanese, he was an international Buddhist scholar. So it's not just either or, as the problem has often been posed, to be or not to be, as Shakespeare's Hamlet says. How about both and neither? So there is freedom and agency. We can move it however we want, meaning we can act karmically. Karma means action and reaction, however we want. We would all agree. But how free are we? Can we fly through the roof? No. How free are we in this whatever we want? We're free. It's not just teenage independence. I think we have to realize or actualize or penetrate the mystery of autonomy within interdependence, free will and determinism. So we can move our elbow however we want, but we can't fly like birds with it. So that's what that's about. So who's responsible? Who's doing what around here? Who can you blame? Them? Who's the them? To you, us and them. Who's the them? There's so many different thems for different us's. Is it the person in the White House? Is it the, I don't know, some other country or belief system group that we disagree with? Is God pulling the strings? Is it only a matter of conditioning, evolution? What would Darwin say about this? I'm sure you all know Darwin. He's the guy with the beagle. Survival of the fittest. So it's not that simple. It's complications and evolution. Didn't I say earlier, quote today, meaning not that long ago, I should remember it. Buddhism, whatever school, Buddhism is about freedom, achieving, realizing, whatever you call it, accomplishing freedom and enlightenment, being free to do what's good for us. First of all, getting wise enough to know what's good for us and for all of us, individually and collectively. So that's where the wisdom comes in, the discernment, the development of insight, self-knowledge, wisdom, understanding karma, and so on. But it's not just intellectual. That's also where action comes in. Unselfish, altruistic action, not just selfish, greedy or harmful action. So we have a choice. We can choose in any moment. But how free are we to choose? That's the question. So trying to become free. So your question bears on this. How much agency do we have? How free are we? Maybe we're not slaves. And even when I say that word, which we're no longer supposed to say, doesn't a picture come in your mind of a certain kind of slave in a certain part of this country? Doing a certain job, perhaps in the field. But there's been slavery in this world for 5,000 years in different places. Almost all cultures have had slaves or been enslaved also. And not only that, think about this. What are we enslaved to? What about addiction? What are we addicted to? Well, it's easy to get a picture. Oh, addicts, addicts, and maybe drugs or alcohol, some substance. What are we addicted to, young friends? Screens, etc. Anyway, I don't want to go down that road right now. Addiction. So how free are we to do what is good for us? That's a big part of this path of liberation. Learning and experimenting and finding out what's good enough for us, what's wholesome, what's helpful, what's virtuous. Us means self and others, the individual and the collective. And then try and act on it, recondition our harmful, unwholesome actions or states of mind, and so on. So that's a great question. It's a big question about freedom and determinism. Those are English words. It's about karma. It's about the nature of, self or no self in the world. If there's no self, who suffers? Who's reborn? So Buddhism teaches there's no separate, you must say all this, separate, independent, permanent self. Selfish, yeah. There's no selfish self. Independent, eternal, permanent self. Separate self. Then who is reborn? Well, maybe there isn't rebirth, maybe there is. Anyway, that's the teaching in Buddhism, Hinduism, and Eastern thought in many religions, Jainism, Taoism, etc., Sikhism. Even Jews and Christians believed in rebirth. So who's doing what around here? Who's responsible for action and reaction, karma and karmic results, except for ourselves, oneself? Like when you're driving, you're the only, one who you're responsible for what you do behind the wheel, or what your state of mind is. Nobody else's. You can blame others if you have a lot of accidents, but it probably has more to do with you. Of course, there might be an accident or a piece of an asteroid or a satellite might fall on you or on your car, but that's generally not what goes on in this world. Lightning strikes is not a good example about how to think, oh, everything's random and there's no karma. There's karma there too. If you put up lightning rods, you improve your odds of surviving, don't you? That's karma. So my lawyer friends told me there's no such thing as accidents in a courtroom discussing cars. Isn't that interesting? They call them crashes, they call them collisions, they have different definitions. But there are no accidents because everybody wants to know the causes, and there are always causes. Similarly with our actions and reactions, and the karma, the character, the destiny, the kind of life that we get. That's not about blame. You can't blame the baby for being born with some disease that the parents had. But that's karma, cause and effect. Anyway, do we have any other questions, Ed?
Nope, that is it. And we are also a little bit over time. So we're grateful as always for your wisdom and
thank you. I'm glad you're all here today, and be well. Enjoy the summer if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, and stay well. Happy trails.